What would you do if the person you just promised forever to disappeared the moment the last dance ended? Imagine standing there, surrounded by friends and family, the echoes of laughter still hanging in the air, and suddenly realizing she was gone, vanished without a single word, without a clue. No farewell, no explanation. Just empty space where she should have been. This wasn't a simple missing person case, something about that night didn't add up. The smiles on faces hid questions that no one dared to ask out loud. The perfect wedding turned into a puzzle that would haunt everyone involved. As the hours stretched into days, every lead seemed to disappear into thin air, and every answer only deepened the mystery. Tonight, we step into that silence, uncover the hidden cracks beneath the surface, and follow a trail that leads nowhere. Stay with us, subscribe, and prepare to hear a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust, love, and disappearance. The day started like any other wedding, a bright spring afternoon filled with smiles, happy tears, and the hopeful promises of a new life together. Friends and family gathered to celebrate Emma and Jason, two people who seemed perfect for each other. The flowers were fresh, the music was soft, and the air was thick with joy. Everyone said it was a day made for memories. But as the sun began to set, the celebration took a sharp turn. Emma, the bride, simply vanished. She left behind her dress, her phone, and a room full of questions. No one knew where she had gone, and no one could say why she would disappear like that. It wasn't just that she was missing, it was how sudden it all was. One moment, she was there, surrounded by laughter and love. The next, she was gone, like she had never existed at all. The police found no signs of struggle, no notes, no messages hinting at a plan. It was as if she had stepped out of this world. This disappearance was different from many others because there was no trail to follow. No enemies, no threats, no obvious reason for her to leave. The people who knew her best were left holding pieces of a puzzle that refused to come together. What started as a day of happiness turned into a nightmare of betrayal, silence, and desperate searching. And as the story unfolds, you will see how the truth becomes harder and harder to find. Emma Reynolds was in her early 30s, born and raised in a small town in North Carolina. She was the kind of person who kept to herself most of the time, quietly working hard at her job as a graphic designer for a local firm. Emma was loved by those close to her. Her family spoke of her as someone steady and kind, always willing to listen but rarely sharing too much about her own life. She had a small circle of friends, loyal but limited, and she guarded her privacy carefully. People described her as thoughtful, sometimes a little shy, but with a strong sense of independence. Those who knew her well said Emma was determined and focused, someone who worked hard to make her way in the world, but beneath her calm exterior, there were hints of worries she never openly spoke about. Jason Miller, her new husband, came from a nearby city. He worked in sales and was known among his friends as outgoing and confident, the kind of person who could easily start a conversation with anyone. Jason was popular in their social circles, always quick with a joke and well-liked at work. Friends said he and Emma had a complicated relationship. There were moments of genuine care and laughter, but also times when things felt tense or distant. Family members described him as protective but sometimes secretive about his own past. Jason's friends noticed that since meeting Emma, he seemed to change, becoming quieter, more serious. Despite that, no one imagined the wedding day would end in such a strange and troubling way. Leading the investigation was Detective Lisa Monroe. With over 15 years on the force, Lisa had handled many missing persons cases, but this one struck a different chord with her. Known for her sharp eye and relentless dedication, she had a reputation for digging deeper than most, often finding answers where others saw dead ends. Lisa believed in leaving no stone unturned and was determined to bring clarity to Emma's disappearance, even when the trail seemed to vanish. Among those closest to Emma was her younger sister, Emily. She was the first to notice that Emma had been acting differently in the days before the wedding, quiet, distracted, sometimes withdrawn. Emily remembered Emma staying up late on her phone, answering calls quickly and then looking troubled. Though Emma never shared what was wrong, Emily sensed that something was not right. Then there was the wedding planner, Grace, who had organized dozens of weddings but had never seen a day like this. Grace noticed a strange tension hanging over the event, moments when Emma seemed distant, almost as if she was somewhere else. The planner recalled catching Jason pacing nervously in the hallway, checking his phone repeatedly. Jason's best friend, Mark, described Jason as a good guy with a lot on his shoulders, someone who loved Emma but was under pressure from work and family. Mark thought the couple had their ups and downs but never expected this kind of ending. Each person added a piece to the puzzle, some spoken in passing, others in quiet moments of reflection. Together, their stories painted a picture of a wedding day filled with smiles on the surface but cracks just beneath. The wedding day began with bright sunlight pouring through the windows, casting a warm glow over the guests as they gathered to celebrate Emma and Jason. Smiles were everywhere, and the air was filled with laughter and chatter. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, vows exchanged, promises made, and hands held tightly in hope for a future together. The reception that followed was lively, with music, dancing, and a steady flow of congratulations from family and friends. Everyone seemed happy, and no one could have predicted the sudden turn the day would take. As the evening grew late, Emma was seen stepping outside for a moment of quiet, away from the crowd. Some guests thought she might have been overwhelmed and needed fresh air. This was the last time many people saw her clearly. A few moments later, there was a brief but urgent phone call Emma took just outside the venue. No one knew who was on the other end or what was said, but it left Emma looking unsettled, her smile fading. Shortly after, her phone buzzed with messages, some strange, brief texts sent in quick succession that puzzled those who later found them. The reception was winding down when it was noticed that Emma was no longer around. At first, people thought she might be in the restroom or talking with close friends, but as minutes passed, concern grew. Family members started asking around, checking rooms and hallways. The panic rose quickly when it became clear she was missing. Jason searched frantically, calling her name, his face growing pale. Friends and guests joined the search, but there was no sign of her anywhere in the building or just outside. Guests recalled odd moments that day. Emma seemed distant, distracted, and Jason appeared tense, checking his phone repeatedly. Some remembered overhearing a quiet argument between the couple earlier in the afternoon, though no one was sure what it was about. There was talk of a stranger who lingered near the entrance, someone no one recognized. A few people even mentioned hearing a strange noise or raised voices just before Emma stepped outside. The question hung heavy in the air. Did Emma choose to leave, or was something else at work? Was this disappearance planned, or was she forced into silence? The uncertainty gripped everyone, as the search stretched through the night with no answers. What should have been a day of celebration became the start of a mystery that refused to unravel. The police were called late that night, after hours of frantic searching by family and friends had turned up nothing. Jason made the call himself, his voice shaky and desperate, explaining that Emma was missing and no one knew where she had gone. Officers arrived quickly, moving with quiet urgency as they began their investigation. Detective Lisa Monroe was assigned to the case almost immediately, a seasoned investigator known for her attention to detail and determination. She understood from the start that this was not going to be a simple missing person case. Her first steps were to speak with everyone who had been at the wedding, the family, the close friends, the wedding staff, even the caterers. Each interview painted a slightly different picture, some small details not quite matching up. Emma's sister described Emma's unusual quietness during the day, while Jason's friends mentioned the tension they saw between the couple. The wedding planner shared her observations of the strange atmosphere and the little arguments that had gone unnoticed by most. Every conversation was carefully recorded, every detail noted. Search efforts went beyond the venue itself. Police canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen Emma leaving or acting strangely. Volunteers joined the search, scouring nearby parks, woods, and side streets well into the early morning. Officers reviewed surveillance cameras from around the area, looking for any sign of Emma or anyone acting suspiciously. Despite all this, the footage showed nothing unusual. No forced exits, no strangers dragging anyone away. It was as if Emma had simply vanished into thin air. False leads began to emerge. A stranger had been spotted near the venue around the time Emma disappeared, but the description was vague, and no one could confirm if he had any connection to the case. A car parked down the street had caught the attention of witnesses. It left quickly after the reception ended, but the owner was never found. Investigators followed up on a phone signal ping from Emma's phone, but the signal disappeared abruptly, giving no clear direction. The case caught the attention of local news, and soon the story spread through the community. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. Some suggested Emma had run away, overwhelmed by the pressures of marriage. Others whispered about foul play, jealousy, or hidden enemies. The police tried to keep control of the narrative, but rumors grew, feeding the anxiety of those waiting for answers. As the days passed, the search stretched on, with no new leads and the pressure mounting on Detective Monroe and her team. The mystery deepened, and the question everyone asked was the same: where was Emma Reynolds? Before the wedding day, Emma Reynolds had lived a quiet life, but as investigators and those close to her began to look deeper, they discovered there were parts of her story she kept hidden from most people. Friends described Emma as someone who was usually calm and composed, but in the weeks before the wedding, some noticed she seemed distant, sometimes withdrawn. She avoided social gatherings she would have normally attended and often declined phone calls or invitations without explanation. It was as if she was carrying a weight no one else could see. Emma's past held a few relationships, none of which ended without some pain or regret. While none were recent, there were whispers among old friends about a breakup that had left her shaken more than she let on. No one suggested any immediate danger, but the memories appeared to have lingered with her. More concerning were signs of emotional struggles that her close circle began to mention, moments of sadness, anxiety, or worry that Emma did not discuss openly. Some friends recalled that Emma had several late-night phone calls in the days before the wedding, often stepping outside to talk quietly. One call came from a number no one recognized. The conversations were brief, and Emma would return looking tense or upset. There were hints that these calls were connected to something troubling, but Emma never confided in anyone about what was happening. She appeared trapped between the life she was preparing to begin and something from her past she couldn't escape. There was also talk of a sudden argument with Jason a few days before the wedding. Neighbors overheard raised voices from their apartment, a sharp contrast to the otherwise quiet relationship everyone had seen. What sparked the disagreement was never made clear. Was it about money, trust, or something else entirely? Investigators found financial records that showed some irregular activity, unexplained withdrawals, and a few transfers that didn't match the couple's usual patterns. Was Emma trying to hide something? Or was someone else involved behind the scenes? As the layers peeled back, a picture emerged of a woman who may have been conflicted about the life ahead. Was she scared of the commitment she was making? Did she feel trapped in a situation she didn't fully understand or want? Was she planning an escape, or was she being pushed toward it by forces unknown? These questions weighed heavily on those searching for answers. Emma Reynolds' disappearance wasn't just about a missing bride, it was about a woman caught between the hopes for a new beginning and secrets that refused to stay buried. When Emma disappeared, Jason was the first person everyone looked to for answers. His reaction was intense: shock, confusion, and grief all mixed into a raw, unsettled presence that filled every room. He spoke to the police with a voice strained by emotion, pleading for anyone who had seen Emma to come forward. Friends described him as devastated, broken in a way that seemed impossible to fake. But as the investigation deepened, some began to notice cracks beneath the surface of his sorrow. Family members shared that in the weeks before the wedding, Jason had been unusually quiet, often withdrawn from conversations he once enjoyed. Some close friends mentioned tension between him and Emma that wasn't obvious to outsiders but had grown over time. There were moments when Jason's explanations didn't quite line up, small inconsistencies about where he was during key moments on the day of the disappearance, or why his phone records showed gaps in activity. These details, while not proof of guilt, raised questions that the police felt they had to follow. Jason's phone was a particular focus. Records showed several calls and texts that were deleted or couldn't be recovered. Some of these communications happened late at night or in places that didn't make immediate sense. When pressed, Jason said these were personal conversations he preferred to keep private, but investigators wondered if they hid something more troubling. His friends offered mixed views. Some believed he was innocent and overwhelmed by the situation, while others admitted they couldn't shake a feeling that Jason knew more than he was letting on. Looking at Jason's family history, there were whispers of old conflicts and unresolved disputes, particularly involving money and business dealings. Some relatives had long-standing grudges that added complexity to the case. While none had a direct link to Emma's disappearance, these tensions painted a picture of a man caught in a web of pressure from different sides. Was this stress part of the reason for the strange events that followed, or did it point to something darker? Emotionally, Jason's story was complicated. He seemed to fluctuate between denial and anger, sometimes lashing out in private, other times collapsing under the weight of his loss. Those close to him described a man who was struggling not only with grief but with guilt, fear, and confusion. It was impossible to know if these feelings were tied to secrets he kept or simply the overwhelming pain of losing the person he loved. The investigators had to weigh all these factors carefully. Jason was both a grieving husband and a potential suspect, a man whose true feelings and actions remained just out of reach. As they dug deeper, the line between sympathy and suspicion blurred, leaving everyone involved with more questions than answers. The wedding planner, Grace, had been working in the industry for years, organizing dozens of weddings, but this day was unlike any she had ever experienced. She noticed things that seemed small at first but later took on new meaning. Emma appeared distracted throughout the event, often lost in thought, and there were moments when she seemed anxious, glancing repeatedly at her phone. Grace remembered seeing Jason pacing nervously, occasionally stepping outside to take calls or speak quietly with others. There was a tension in the air that no one openly acknowledged but that Grace could feel, an undercurrent of something unresolved. Emma's sister, Emily, was one of the first family members to voice concern about the day's strange moments. She recalled overhearing parts of a conversation Emma had with a close friend just before the ceremony, where Emma spoke about feeling trapped and uncertain. Emily described how Emma seemed hesitant but never explained what was wrong. She also remembered seeing Emma's expression change when a phone call came through during the reception. Her smile faltered, and she quickly excused herself. Emily wished now that she had asked more questions, but at the time, she didn't want to upset her sister. Neighbors living near the wedding venue reported unusual sounds that night, raised voices, a door slamming, and later, the faint noise of a car speeding away. Some said they saw a figure walking briskly down the street around the time Emma disappeared, though descriptions varied and were never very clear. Police followed up on these reports, checking surveillance cameras from nearby homes and businesses, but nothing conclusive was found. The lead seemed promising at first but then faded into dead ends. During the investigation, a new clue emerged that briefly renewed hope. Investigators found a small item belonging to Emma, a delicate bracelet, that had been left behind on a bench just outside the venue. This piece of jewelry had not been reported missing by Jason or family until the police discovered it. Along with this, a series of text messages from Emma's phone surfaced. One message stood out, a cryptic line sent to an unknown number just hours before the wedding. The message read, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." It was brief but heavy with meaning, hinting at a struggle no one had seen. This clue sent a ripple through the investigation, raising new questions. Was this a sign that Emma planned to disappear? Was she reaching out for help, or was she saying goodbye? Or could someone else have sent the message to create confusion? The detectives worked tirelessly to trace the number, but it led to a dead end, a prepaid phone that vanished after the message was sent. The discovery sparked intense debate among the investigators and family alike. Was this a breakthrough or simply another false trail in an already tangled mystery? The answers remained just out of reach, as the search for Emma continued, the silence growing heavier with each passing day. The police turned to forensic experts to sift through every bit of digital information they could find on Emma's phone and online accounts. Specialists worked to recover deleted messages, trace calls, and map her social media activity in the days leading up to the wedding. They hoped these digital footprints would shed light on her state of mind and reveal any clues about her disappearance. What they found was a mix of clear evidence and frustrating gaps. Emma's phone showed a flurry of activity just hours before the ceremony, calls to unknown numbers, text messages deleted hastily, and location data that placed her near the wedding venue but then vanished without explanation. The forensic team was able to recover some deleted messages, including a few cryptic texts that hinted at emotional distress. However, many key messages appeared to have been wiped clean, as if someone wanted to hide parts of the story. Social media posts from Emma's accounts were mostly normal, but there was one private message to a close friend expressing fear and uncertainty about her upcoming life changes. Jason's phone also came under scrutiny. Investigators checked his calls and messages for anything unusual. His phone records showed inconsistencies. At certain times, his phone was turned off or out of service range, raising questions about where he was and what he was doing. When questioned about these gaps, Jason explained they were due to poor signal in some parts of the area, but the timing was suspicious. His alibis for certain periods on the day of Emma's disappearance didn't match witness statements exactly, adding to the complexity. The forensic findings presented a puzzle that both helped and hindered the investigation. On one hand, the digital traces suggested Emma was under emotional strain and possibly planning something. On the other, the deliberate deletion of messages and missing data made it harder to understand the full picture. The experts noted that such careful removal of information could indicate someone trying to cover their tracks, whether Emma herself or another person. One forensic analyst involved in the case explained that missing digital evidence often points to intentional actions rather than accidental loss. This raised the possibility that Emma's disappearance was not spontaneous but planned, or worse, that foul play was involved, and someone was trying to hide their involvement. Despite the high-tech tools and thorough examination, the true story behind Emma's last messages remained elusive, keeping the mystery alive and investigators chasing shadows. Emma's disappearance sent shockwaves through the small town where she had lived most of her life. People who had once greeted her with smiles now spoke in hushed tones, worried and confused. The close-knit community felt the weight of the unknown, as if a shadow had fallen over their daily routines. Houses that had always been bright with life now showed signs of quiet concern. Portraits of Emma hung in windows, and hand-painted posters were pasted on street corners, asking anyone with information to come forward. Neighbors and friends organized candlelight vigils, gathering under the night sky to share prayers and hopes for Emma's safe return. Social media became a hub for support and information sharing, with hashtags spreading across platforms as strangers and locals alike joined the search in their own way. These online campaigns helped keep the story alive but also brought challenges. The line between genuine concern and speculation blurred, as unverified rumors and wild theories began to spread rapidly. Local news outlets covered the story extensively, often walking a fine line between sympathetic reporting and sensationalism. Some media reports focused on the heartbreak and mystery, telling Emma's story with care and respect. Others, chasing views and attention, pushed headlines that hinted at scandal or hidden secrets, fueling the public's hunger for answers. This added pressure on law enforcement, as officers faced not only the task of finding Emma but also managing the growing expectations and scrutiny from the community and media. Online forums became breeding grounds for theories. Some believed Emma had run away to start a new life, overwhelmed by the pressures of marriage. Others suspected foul play, suggesting kidnapping or worse. Conspiracy theories began to take hold, connecting dots where none existed and painting characters in the case as villains or heroes without evidence. This swirl of speculation weighed heavily on Emma's family and friends, who struggled to separate fact from fiction while coping with their own grief. The emotional toll was visible everywhere. Family members spoke openly about the sleepless nights, the endless waiting, and the heartbreak of not knowing what had happened. Friends described a sense of helplessness, as the story they once knew turned into a painful question mark. The community rallied together in support, but beneath the surface, the pain and fear lingered, reminding everyone that the search for Emma was far from over. Weeks after Emma vanished, a new piece of information came to light that changed the course of the investigation. An anonymous tip reached the police, claiming that someone had seen Emma walking alone late at night, several miles from the town. The witness described a figure matching Emma's description near an old abandoned property on the outskirts, a place no one associated with her. This tip led officers to search the area more thoroughly, and during the search, they discovered an object that belonged to Emma, a small, worn notebook, tucked away beneath some debris. The notebook was filled with entries that hinted at inner struggles Emma had never shared openly. Some pages spoke of fear and confusion, others of secret meetings and hidden conversations. The discovery stunned both the investigators and the community. It suggested that Emma's disappearance might have deeper roots than anyone imagined. This was no longer just a missing persons case, it had become a tangled story of secrets, pain, and possibly betrayal. With this new evidence, the investigation took a sharper turn. Some began to suspect that Emma might have planned her disappearance, wanting to escape a life she felt trapped in. Others argued that the presence of the notebook in such a remote place pointed toward foul play, that someone wanted her gone and tried to erase her past. The lines between victim and suspect blurred, raising difficult questions about what really happened. The tension grew as the police tried to piece together the connections Emma hinted at in her writings. There were names, places, and vague references to people she feared or didn't trust. Among these was a name tied to someone close to Jason, hinting at hidden relationships and possible motives. The deeper the investigators dug, the more complicated the story became, revealing a web of emotion, loyalty, and deception no one had seen before. For the public, this breakthrough brought a mix of hope and uncertainty. Some saw it as the key to finally solving the mystery, while others feared it meant that the worst was yet to come. As the case unfolded, every answer seemed to raise new questions, keeping the search for truth alive but no less painful for those waiting in the dark. The notebook found near the abandoned property opened a door to secrets that no one had expected to find. As investigators read through Emma's private thoughts, they uncovered hints of relationships and struggles that had been carefully hidden from those around her. Pages described moments of fear, feelings of being watched, and mentions of people she couldn't trust. These weren't just random worries, they seemed connected to real people in her life, including some close to Jason. As the police dug deeper, family secrets began to surface. It turned out that Emma's family and Jason's circle were not as straightforward as everyone had believed. There were whispers of past disputes, of old arguments over money and loyalty that had never been fully resolved. Some relatives revealed that there had been tension between Emma and members of Jason's family, though no one had spoken openly about it before. These hidden conflicts now cast a new light on the case. Friends and acquaintances came forward with emotional testimonies, sharing details they had kept private out of loyalty or fear. Some spoke of Emma confiding in them about feeling trapped, while others described strange behavior from Jason in the days before the wedding. One close friend revealed a conversation where Emma had expressed doubts about the marriage, fears that she might be making a mistake but didn't know how to say it. Another described Jason as controlling, sometimes jealous, though no one could say if this played a role in what happened. Psychologists consulted on the case suggested that the emotional pressures Emma faced might have pushed her to a breaking point. The fear and anxiety revealed in her writings, combined with the complicated family dynamics, painted a picture of someone caught between hope and despair. Whether she planned to run or was forced into silence, these factors were critical to understanding the story behind her disappearance. These revelations shook the investigation. The simple narrative of a missing bride was replaced by a complicated tale of human emotion, secrets, and pain. Each new detail added weight to the case, showing how much was hidden beneath the surface of what seemed like a happy wedding day. For those searching for answers, the truth was no longer clear or easy, but the search continued, driven by the hope that Emma's story would finally be told. Over time, many theories surfaced to explain Emma's sudden disappearance, each one carrying its own weight and raising more questions than answers. One of the most common ideas was that Emma ran away to start a new life, escaping the pressures she felt from the wedding and the future ahead. Supporters of this theory pointed to her private messages and the notebook entries where she expressed fear and uncertainty. They believed she might have planned to disappear quietly, leaving behind the life she no longer wanted. However, skeptics questioned why she would leave so abruptly, without any contact or sign, especially considering the close bond she had with family and friends. Another theory suggested foul play, that Emma was a victim of violence or coercion, possibly at the hands of someone she trusted. This idea gained ground because of the strange behaviors around the wedding day and the inconsistencies in Jason's story. Some thought that the tension and hidden conflicts uncovered in the investigation hinted at darker motives. But with no physical evidence or clear signs of struggle, this theory remained difficult to prove. It relied heavily on circumstantial details, making it hard for authorities to pursue without more concrete leads. Jason's role in the mystery was also widely debated. Some believed he was innocent, devastated by the loss of his bride and desperate for answers. Others suspected that he knew more than he admitted, pointing to gaps in his alibis and deleted messages. Experts in criminal psychology noted that his emotional reactions could be genuine grief mixed with guilt, or a calculated effort to appear innocent. Without solid proof, his involvement remained an open question, adding a layer of suspicion that complicated the search for truth. There was also speculation about the involvement of a stranger or third party. The reports of an unknown figure near the venue, the mysterious phone calls, and the abandoned notebook suggested the possibility that someone else was part of the story, someone who wanted Emma gone or who forced her to leave. This theory explained some of the unexplained details but faced the same challenges as others, lack of evidence and concrete leads. Criminal psychologists studying the case pointed out that disappearances like Emma's often involve a mixture of factors: emotional distress, personal conflicts, and sometimes external threats. They warned against focusing too narrowly on one theory without considering the full complexity of human behavior. Each possibility had strengths, but also significant gaps, leaving the investigation in a state of uncertainty. As the theories circulated, they shaped public opinion and influenced how the case was understood. Yet, none provided the definitive answer, and the search for Emma continued, marked by hope, suspicion, and the painful reality of the unknown. Emma remains missing to this day, with no confirmed sighting or clear trace of where she might have gone. The case has stretched on for months, then years, leaving a heavy silence in place of answers. The police continue to treat the disappearance as an open investigation, though the active search efforts have slowed. Detectives still review evidence and follow up on any new tips that come in, but the trail has grown cold, and frustration has begun to settle in among those working the case. Law enforcement faces many challenges. Without new leads or concrete evidence, it is difficult to move the investigation forward. Digital records have been thoroughly examined, witnesses have been interviewed multiple times, and physical searches of the area have turned up nothing new. There are legal limitations, too, such as privacy laws and the lack of physical evidence, which restrict the tools police can use to dig deeper. This has complicated efforts to bring closure to the case. For Emma's family and friends, the waiting has been unbearable. They live in a constant state of hope mixed with heartbreak, never knowing if she is alive or gone. Every unanswered question weighs heavily on their hearts, and the uncertainty has created a deep sense of loss that no one can fully explain. The emotional toll shows in every conversation, every visit to the police station, and every community gathering held in her name. Public appeals for information remain active. Rewards have been offered by local organizations and concerned individuals to encourage anyone with knowledge to come forward. Social media campaigns continue to spread awareness, keeping Emma's story alive in the minds of the public. Yet, despite all efforts, the mystery of what happened to Emma Reynolds remains unsolved, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the limits of our understanding. The story of Emma Reynolds is one that carries a heavy weight, one filled with unanswered questions, heartbreak, and the kind of silence that haunts those left behind. It reminds us how fragile trust can be, how people can hide parts of themselves even from those they love the most. This case shows the deep cracks that can lie beneath the surface of any relationship, and how sometimes, what seems like happiness may mask pain, fear, or secrets we may never fully understand. It forces us to think about the nature of the people closest to us. How well do we really know them? What parts of their lives remain hidden, locked away behind smiles and quiet moments? Emma's disappearance asks us to consider how easily lives can change without warning, and how quickly the people we think we understand can become strangers. It challenges us to look beyond appearances and question the stories we tell ourselves about those we hold dear. If faced with a mystery like this, someone disappearing without a trace after a moment meant to be full of joy, what would you do? How far would you go to find the truth, and how would you cope with the uncertainty? These questions are not easy to answer, but they linger, demanding reflection. In the end, Emma Reynolds' story is a reminder that reality is often more complicated than it seems. It teaches us to be aware that beneath every surface, there may be truths waiting to be uncovered, truths that may change everything we think we know. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the mysterious case of Emma Reynolds. Her story leaves us with more questions than answers, but by sharing it, we keep hope alive, that someday, the truth will come to light. We invite you to share your thoughts, your theories, or even stories you know of that echo this kind of mystery. Every voice adds to the search for understanding. If you found this story compelling, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next deep dive into a true crime story. Coming soon, we will explore another chilling case that will challenge everything you think you know about trust and betrayal. Until then, let us remember those still missing, those whose stories remain unfinished, and keep faith in the search for truth that never ends.